All right, so tonight we are very excited to have Dr. Brooks Tiller, and this is an episode that I've been excited about. Wanted to have this guy on the show for a long time, and Brooks is the kind of guy. If you looked in the dictionary and you looked at Christian man, he is the definition of a Christian man. In my opinion, there's not a lot of those dudes running around, and Brooks is a solid guy, and I'm excited to hear his story tonight. And we're going to dive into a really tough subject. We're going to talk about divorce from a men's perspective. And I know I've gone through that process personally, and I'm excited to hear Brooks and him share his insight and also get into his book that he wrote. So without further ado, the man himself, Dr. Brooks Tiller.
Hey, man, thanks. Appreciate it. It's
yeah, man.
It's one of those things where I guess as we'll get into it, I wish I wasn't here and do it, but at the same time, I'm blessed and honored to be able to hopefully share a little bit and pour into others' lives and help them as they navigate the struggles and strife that we face in this life.
That's awesome. Well, so kind of ramp us up. Let's walk through your background, kind of who you are, where you came from, what you're doing now.
So I grew up in a little small town, Hohenwald, Tennessee. It was really just, I graduated with about 100 kids in the high school. Kind of everybody knew everybody. Most of my family was very close. Both my mom and my dad's side. Together, I had 6 aunts and uncles on one side, 5 aunts and uncles on the other, and tons of cousins. So we just grew up it's just a big family, and just really enjoyed all that time together. I have 2 little sisters. I'm the big brother, and just grew up living a really just kind of a country life, a very simple life. Both of my parents were teachers, so just growing up, it was a lot of fun. Looking back, I had a lot of really, really close friends and cousins, and my sisters were all still really close. So it was a fun time. Growing up now, it's kind of shocking with having kids and all the things there is. I'm like, man, it was so much simple back then. But it was one of those I loved it. I just loved that small town feel, and that's just really it was very family centered and just trying to be do your best and enjoy the day that you have.
I love that. And so obviously you're a doctor. How does that come about?
So it was a process to get there. So I went to undergrad. I thought I was going to be a wildlife science game warden.
Okay.
And when I graduated with an environmental science wildlife degree, and jobs were hard to find. Played baseball through college, and then after college, I started boxing a little bit, working out harder, and ended with an injury. And I was teaching school and coaching at the time, and teaching science. And then that summer, actually, I took a job out west as a cowboy, working on a ranch, breaking horses, teaching other people how to ride horses. And then eventually, when I came back and thought, well, I'm going to go back to school, maybe get a master's in wildlife until I can figure out, a job to do. And during that time, I got a bad back injury, ended up having to have surgery, a lot of therapy. And in that, I was like, man, this is kind of cool. I like the human body. I like working out. Maybe this is something I can do. And so from that, went into, took the process, took some more classes. It took me a while, but I finally got into PT school and went the whole medical process and ended up with a doctorate in physical therapy. And that led me, that led me to working with professional athletes, Olympic level athletes, traveled around the world, just training these different high level athletes. And that was just a great experience and a lot of fun, really.
Where'd you play college baseball?
At Freed Hardeman.
Oh, that's right. I think you told me that. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good Church of Christ school right there.
Yeah.
My grandfather went to Freed Hardeman.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, so let's back up for just a second, because you said that you worked on a ranch. Where was that at?
That was in a town called Fairplay, Colorado.
Okay, so, fantastic.
It's actually South Park, Colorado. So the guys that I guess that kind of came up with South Park were from that area, and South Park was the town's name back in the day, the frontier days and all that, when they were just start founding everything.
Yeah.
And so in town, they had a lot of the South Park characters drawn on windows and that sort of thing.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's
so
fun.
it was way up, way up in elevation. It was,
Did you kill Kenny?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's important to ask too, because we have this conversation quite a bit. You enjoy country music?
I enjoy some, yeah.
Yeah. See.
Well, we already know
Totally.
He worked on the ranch.
Yeah. I'm just making a case that it's.
Yeah, every podcast, man. Every podcast, this dude finds a way to talk about country music, and it's not only on the show. I have to hear about it at work all day, and
There's good country music.
It's exhausting, man. It's exhausting.
There's good country music.
When did you graduate high school, Brooks? What year?
1998.
Okay, so I graduated in 97, and way back in the 90s, Nashville, Tennessee actually had a local metal scene, and they played metal on the radio. So there are a few of us from the 90s that are still alive and kicking. My son.
I remember when 103 went from rock.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Well, my son Jacob is 6.5. When he was a baby, I had a Pantera stroller. I pushed him around in the neighborhood.
That's nice.
And it had flames on it.
That's awesome.
But anyways, I'm glad you got that out of the way because I knew that was coming. So
I think it's important to touch on it. So you said he's the epitome of a good Christian man.
Oh, so he likes country. That's it. Okay, I see where you're going with that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I guess that's cool though. I appreciate hearing the story and kind of the evolution of how you got into being a doctor in physical therapy. That said, does that coincide with the American Ninja Warrior path? And kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit. It's just the fact of being on that, I guess, the physical therapy side. You can't say, if you've ever encountered anyone in the medical system, doesn't mean that they're physically fit or healthy. But for me, just my health and exercise was always something that was important to me. So I would always make sure I was working out, doing that sort of thing. And even, I don't know, many years ago, I would randomly, when I would visit friends in places, and I would just randomly do pull-ups. And we'd be somewhere, and I'd just like, hey, how many pull-ups do you think I could do on that? And we'd just take bets and see how many pull-ups I could do on this random bar somewhere. And then some friends, and we would video some of it, take pictures, and that was back when all you had was Facebook, and somebody would put it up. But from that, it just kept on. I started sharing some videos, fitness and health, and just different challenges I was doing. And they reached out to me and just had the opportunity to fill out the paper, make a little video. Turned it in, and they called, and they call you on pretty much. They call you at last minute. Hey, we like your stuff. Do you want to be on? Yeah, they're like, okay, be here in 3 weeks. So there's not a lot of prep time. It's like I was like, I'm not a Ninja Warrior training guy. I might climb a tree. That's about the closest I got to Ninja Warrior stuff. But it was one of those things. It was a fun thing where it helped me. It opened up some doors for me to where, there they call me the healthy hunter. And I was all camoed up and everything. And that little bit of, the little 15 seconds of fame, if you will, that they put on TV, it opened up some doors where I was able to go and speak to some men's events, wild game suppers, and even had some people reach out to me like, man, I saw you on there, and it kind of encouraged me to go work out and be healthy for my kids and stuff. And that kind of thing is like, man, if it just, it's always like, if you just do something and it helps somebody else, then that's what it's really all about.
That's really cool.
That is cool. So in that same vein, you called the healthy hunter. Is there a reason behind that? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was, there they want you to have a little nickname, something catchy. But it was really the something that I thought about of, I love to hunt, I love to fish, I love to be outdoors, and I'd always thought, especially as I got into physical therapy school and got out and started working with different clients, I would work every occasion. I would work with someone. I was like, man, that guy reminds me of my granddad, or that guy reminds me of my uncle, and people that I have passed away before I knew a lot about health and fitness, and it kind of hit me one day. I was like, man, if I knew then what I know now, maybe I'd have had a little more time with my granddad, or a little more time with my uncle, and it made me think about that, and so it made me want to encourage the guys. I was like, the old redneck like me, just like, hey, like, let's, you don't have, if you eat deer meat, is one of the best things you can have to eat. You go fish, it's amazing to eat fish.
Yeah.
But then we take it and we deep fry it and we eat it with a bunch of other junk. And I was like, that's not, like it's like you're taking the prime food and you're kind of adulterating it, making it not very healthy. So for me, it was kind of like, man, I want to just share some of the health and fitness that I knew with outdoorsmen. And that's kind of how that Healthy Hunter moniker kind of came about, was just being able to share the health and fitness love with my love of health, and kind of combining those.
I love that. So you've always been a big hunter then?
Yeah, I grew up, and that was a staple at our house. Deer meat. It's like Thanksgiving, like turkey's not really a staple. The first time the Pilgrims had deer steak, they didn't have turkey. So and turkey's not going to feed a whole village, but a couple of deer will. So so we grew up. Deer hunting was big, always fishing and just being outdoors and just learning, really being a woodsman and learning how to be outside and live off the land if we need to.
That's awesome. Now, when you hunt, are you rifle? Are you bow?
So I've always just taken the thought that whatever's legal and in season, that's what I'm going for.
That's awesome.
I love shooting my bow. That's a passion for sure, is shooting my bow. But when it comes down to it, really, it's rifle season. I'm going to take my rifle. If it's muzzleloader, I'm going to take muzzleloader. And whatever it is, like I'm not. And how some people, they're like, oh man, archery's all I do. And I'm like, fine, that's cool for you. But I know that sometimes that rifle season comes up. There's a deer I want to shoot. It's 100 yards. I might can make that shot with my bow, but I'm going to be a lot better with my rifle. So I'm going to take my rifle if it's
for
legal.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, look, I kind of want to jump in. I know we've got your book here forward. I kind of want you to walk me through, how did you come to this? And however much you're comfortable with sharing.
All good.
Awesome.
Yeah. I want to share something real fast, Brooks, before we get into the book, and this ties into it. But so we met in the car rider line at our kids' school. And I'll never forget this. I was at church on an Easter Sunday, and if I remember right, you saw me at church, and then kind of addressed me in a car rider line. And we were talking, and somehow it came up that I'd been attending a church, but I had changed because I had been through a divorce. And then you kind of started telling me a little about your story, and then you reached into your car and you handed me this book right here. And it was really cool that you were just so friendly and outgoing. I'm really glad you kind of initiated that conversation. And I know you're going to talk about your book, but I want to throw this out real quick. The cool thing with this book is that it's got some great insight from you, but also I like how you have scriptures tied with it, and then you kind of journal about how that applies to your situation. And even from just a mental health standpoint, I think it's effective. But just the way we met was really cool. And I think God puts people in your life for a reason. And the moment we met was just kind of one of those cool moments in time where, hey, this book can actually not only benefit the average Joe out there, but for someone like me who kind of felt almost like an outcast in a church that I was in. Even though I wasn't the guy that initiated the divorce, I was the one that was kind of serve the papers. But as a man, and I want you to get into this when you feel comfortable, people don't realize how hard it is for a guy on the other side of a divorce, especially a guy that is present for his kids, wants to spend more time with his kids. And I think the world in general needs to hear that side. We need to have a voice in that because, you know, you and I have a mutual friend. Chance knows him, Will Bledsoe. I'm not going to throw his story out, but he was on our show. You, me, and Will, man, we all kind of have a similar path where we want to see our kids more. And I think men need a voice that necessarily they don't get it. You know, it's kind of like, oh, the mom is going to raise the kids and the dad's going to see them every other Wednesday and every other weekend. And that's just not right, in my opinion. I think men need to have more of a say in, hey, it's my child too, and I want to be present for him or her. So that was long-winded, but go ahead and kickstart us off, brother. Let's hear about the book.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, it's one of those things where I guess when you've been through certain things, I don't know the way I feel like there's times I can look at somebody, I can look them in the eye, and I'm like, man, I remember that look. I remember how it felt when I had that look in my eye, and just seeing those things. And I guess I'm more aware now. You know, like I said, I saw you almost every day picking your kid up, and then I saw you at the Easter thing and didn't get to speak to you there, and then so it kind of spurred me. I was like, all right, this dude's like bringing this kid to an Easter thing, you know. And so I think just when you've been in certain situations, you're more aware. And so for me, that's really kind of where it all came from. And like you said, just, you know, you're getting started these papers and it's like, man, this is not what I want, but this is where we're at. You know, I don't want to be here, but hey, we're here. So let's do what we need to do. And, and like you're saying, I mean, yeah. And you know, when you talk about before I get the book, it's like, you know, there's a lot of studies, and I've looked at it with custody and all of that sort of thing. And if you look back and say, you know, back a long time ago, it was like the women had no rights. And, you know, basically, you know, like in Bible times, if you will, Moses, you know, back in those days, the man could walk on the front porch and say, I don't want this woman anymore. And then like she could leave, you know, but then he had like 5 years to claim her, which is, you know, like that's like some of those weird old laws, you know, that they had. Yeah. And it's like, you know, 4 years later, you know, her dad gives her a big farm. He's like, oh, I'm going to take you back. You know, it's like, so what, you know, that's not a good situation either. But like you said, it's kind of, we've swung to this other side, and I'm seeing a little bit more swing back towards the middle. But, you know, on average, I think the average dad in America gets about 30 to 35% of the time with the kids. And I mean, wow. They're, you know, I mean, we all know, let's just say we all know guys who are, you know, they're not good guys. But we also know, you know, say moms that are not, maybe that, you know, probably shouldn't have that much time either. So, you know, and so you, I think you take those out, and it should be kind of work out in the middle a little bit. And, you know, there's some stats out there where, I mean, but even like some of the best on the state averages, like 50-50 is the best when it comes to a man. And to the worst, it's like 20%, you know, on an average that a man gets, you know, custody of his kids. And so, you know, that's one of those things. It's hard. I see some changes going on with that, and there's some other people like legislation that are trying to help with that. But I think it's one of those things, you know, it's like as a dad, if you're going through that right now, like, you know, you got to keep the faith, and you just got to keep doing what you're doing, plugging forward, and just being solid for your kids, and just knowing that it's gonna pay off in the end. You know, speaking of that, but to get to the book, and that's really what you know, when I handed you that, it was kind of just in the early stages of it, but going through divorce, and a lot of it, you know, I mean, you're lonely, and just, you know, speaking from personal, like, you're lonely, you're kind of, you like you don't know what's going on. I mean, my parents have been married for 50 years, so it's like I didn't know you know, I had a few friends and people that close to me that went through divorce, but never somebody super close. And so it's kind of, you're like, man, I don't know what's going on. You're kind of scared. You're afraid you'll never see your kids again. All this stuff is kind of going through your head. And at the same time, you're ashamed. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want anybody to know what's going on, because, well, what if we get back together? And then And then I said all this stuff, and I don't want to, and so you're going back and forth, and it gets tough. And through that, I kept looking for resources. I was looking for books and podcasts and things that I could do that would help me as a man that's trying to live a godly life, but also knowing that I'm going to be divorced. And I know that, and there's certain parts of, just the Christian, in the Christian formal church, sometimes, if the word divorce is just a bad word. And if you're divorced, you're kind of, even if you're not outcast, sometimes you'll feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Unintentionally, it's kind of like in your own head, you're like, all right, I'm seeing all these happy people, and why am I here? But in that, I started writing a lot. I just wrote down everything that I could. I read a bunch of books, went through some courses, just doing my mental health and just being where I was. Some deal with divorce, some just with men's mental health, some just with, dealing with changes, whatever it was. And I would read, and in some of the books, I was like, man, a third of this book is really good. The other 2/3 I could not recommend because of some of the things they said or what they recommended. I was like, that's not what we need right now. And so through that, I took a lot of notes. I had I've got 100,000 word document where I just wrote stuff down of questions and answers and thoughts. And as I was going through it, I was like, man, I met some other guys and talked to some friends. And then 2 days later, this guy was like, hey, I'm having lunch with my friend. His best friend just called him, and he just got handed divorce papers. He's lost his last year's Easter egg, doesn't know what to do. Like, can you give him a call? And so I started doing things like that, just, friend of a friend of a friend. Let me give them a call and say, hey, like, encourage them and do whatever. And so I started putting some of this stuff together. A friend of mine was like, man, you should just like write some of this stuff down. And I just started putting it together, and I had a rough draft. And a friend, he's a youth minister, and I was there, and I saw him, and it was during their vacation Bible school. And I saw him, and when I saw him, I was like, man, I don't like the look in that guy's eye. Like, I could just tell it was this sad look, and I was like, I highly recognize that look. And then, like, the next day, I actually saw him and his wife together, and I could just tell, like, something's not right. And so a few weeks go by, and then I find out, his wife's leaving him. And a few weeks later, I saw him, and I talked to him, and and tried to encourage him, and told him, I was, hey man, I got some stuff I've written down I'd love to share with you. And he, at the time, he's like, yeah, like, just still in that, like, dude, I don't want to talk about it phase. And then finally, about a month or two later, I saw him again, and I was just trying to encourage him. And then the next day, it was like 7 a.m., he's like, hey man, sorry, yesterday was rough. Thanks for help. And I was like, hey man, if you don't mind, I'd love just to send you this stuff, see what you think about it. I'm just kind of trying to put some stuff together. And I did. I sent it to him. And he's like, yeah, sure. So I sent it to his email, a little PDF, rough draft of what turned into the book. And I found out later that night he was sitting there reading it, and I was told like he just pretty much was reading it and just crying and just like I'm not alone, like I'm not the only one who's been here and dealing with this. And that was enough, I guess, encouragement and just to get me to where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like do this and put this out. And so from there, it just kind of went through the notes I had, try to make them where they're simple enough, for like guys. I mean, we don't want to read a novel. We don't want to, it's like, man, we got stuff to do. I don't want a 15-minute like piece I need to read. So I try to make it like 300 to 500 words. And, and I'm not a mental health guy. I'm not a mental health coach. I'm not a psychology guy. I'm none of that. But I realized for me that I needed to write it down. And I might not want to talk to you about it. I might not want to talk to my best friend about it. But I can write it down and I can see it on paper. And sometimes I'm writing stuff down. I'm like, man, I was like, dude, if somebody talked to my kid that way, like, there would be problems. Why am I talking to myself that way? And so by writing it down, it's kind of like, I mean, I'm like, you've got this voice inside your head and this self-talk, and you're the loudest, most common voice that you're going to hear. And for me, that book is just 300 to 500 words. And I don't try to get preachy because I know some people, they don't want the preachiness. And I respect that, especially if you're going through some hard times. Sometimes you're like, well, why is God letting this happen? At the same time, I want to make sure to include, hey, here's some Bible verses if you want to dig deeper. So the whole purpose of the book is just to give you this 300 to 500 words of, like, you're not the only one. Other people are here, and you're not alone. And I'm going to walk. I want to walk. It's kind of I'm walking beside you and with you. And then at the same time, here's a little bit more. Like, here's a couple questions if you want to. And the right side of the page is blank, so you can just write as much as you want. And then a couple of Bible verses if you want to dig deeper into God's word about what this is. And if you don't, you just skip over it. But it's kind of a choose your own adventure, if you will. But there's about 30 in there, and each one of them just a different topic about things. And for me, it was just like, I can write about it. Step one. And then finally, that helps me get at least, I guess, enough clarity, enough wisdom on what I'm talking about to actually maybe just talk to a friend, talk to a mentor, talk to somebody about it. And then the third step, if I need more, I may go seek professional help and actually sit down with a therapist. Like, all right, my friends have gotten me this far, but I still got some stuff I need to work through. And I think that there's that step, because most guys are not going to be like, they're not going to wake up in the morning like, okay, I need to go to therapy, and like that's just not going to happen. So for me, the book was kind of like, all right, here's just your start, and it was one of those things where kind of like whenever we met, I was like, here's a start. Like, I don't know where you're at on your journey, but maybe this will help. And it's one of those things like if you're a preacher, you've never been through this stuff. You could have a couple in your office, and somebody comes in and is like, oh, man, I think I'm getting divorced. And like, you could take this book, hey, I'm here for you. Here's a little resource. Just try to read through this, and maybe that'll help you get your thoughts organized. And that's kind of all it was just trying to, I guess you said, come up with a resource that I needed and wanted when I didn't have it.
One thing I liked about it, Brooks, is that I know men tend to carry shame, and a lot of times we self-sabotage through that shame because we're too afraid or too embarrassed to share, our story, especially when it pertains to a divorce. Because it is embarrassing, and I know for me in the book, it was neat to see some scripture to show me that God created me. My life has a purpose, and even if I've strayed or gone through trials or hard times, He's going to be there with me through it. He's not going to leave me, and I don't have to figure it out on my own or try to find the answer right away. But I know He's with me no matter what, and I'm not broken. I'm not damaged goods. Because for me personally, like when I moved out, I felt like something was wrong with me, man. Like I just felt like the whole world was looking at me like, oh, damn, this guy's divorced again. What's wrong with this cat? And I actually had gotten really involved in my church before I was divorced, and I was on the path to become a deacon. And when I got hit with all this, man, it really kind of pulled me. I stayed in church, but it was hard for me, man. It was hard for me to stay positive and be grateful and to even share a lot, because I just felt like, man, here I am trying to finally be the head of the household, be a man of God, and now my family's gone. What do I do? And you and I both have Church of Christ backgrounds, and Spring Meadows is an awesome place. I've only been there a few times, but the other place I was attending was an older congregation, and I had so many people that I'd never met before come up to me and try to counsel me and correct me, and I was just like, it wasn't my idea. Like, there's nothing to do here. It's done. And not really, I would say judgment, but it was more like what have you done? What have you done? Yeah, you're the guy. What have you done? And I just got kind of frustrated, man. It just kind of felt like, well, maybe I need to go somewhere with a younger crowd that has guys in their 40s with 2 kids that have been divorced. And Chance and I joke about this. We're from the south side of the kingdom because we're not like the Ned Flanders Christian. I mean, I've never been like that. And so it was kind of a way to and that's what I love about you, man, because you're like this all-American guy, hanging out in the woods, and you like, shooting guns and fishing, and you're just a cool dude. And growing up in the Church of Christ, for me, I didn't meet a lot of guys like that, man. It was, and I like the Church of Christ, don't get me wrong, but I didn't see a lot of men that I thought, man, I would be like that guy. That guy's cool. Yeah. It was just more, like that kind of, that legalistic mindset. Well, if you got divorced, you're going to hell. Like you screwed up, man. Like it's no coming back.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, that feeling I think is normal for a lot of people. Just because it's like that, like you said, you feel guilty. You're like, man, I didn't. What did I do wrong? Because I mean, I'd say that most normal people, whenever something goes wrong, like you look at like, what did I do wrong first, instead of like, sure. Mm-hmm. And then I think, and it's one of those things where, I mean, the term that we came up with as we were, we're looking at watching a podcast and doing some courses and things of that nature to help not only men, but like especially help men, but also help the church leaders understand better. And the what we termed up was the divorced disciples, because I always think about Peter was a fisherman, and Jesus said, "Hey, come go fishing. Quit fishing and come with me." Mm-hmm. And then Jesus dies on the cross, and Jesus is dead, and now Peter, he's with all the other apostles, and he's like, "I'm going fishing." And they're like, "All right, we're coming with you." And then we find Jesus like comes back out and finds him, and he's fishing, because it's like like deep down, Peter was like, "I'm a fisherman." Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a lot of times, like for us, it's like, yes, I'm divorced, yes. That doesn't mean I can't be a disciple. It doesn't mean I can't, do something and actually still bring other people to Christ and to be a leader to my family, to the church, whatever it may be. And for me, that was a really big kind of a turning point. It was like, like I can still be a leader. I can still be somebody that leads other people to Christ and be a good example. And even though I may have been through this, because we'll see it, and a lot of times in the church, you may see somebody that maybe had an addiction problem or pornography or, whatever these things may, and we're like, they may have been in jail for, stealing or whatever, for being a thief. But then they come to church, it's like, oh, like you changed. And it's almost like they're more accepted than and instead of, realizing like, and even if someone's like, hey, like, I'm divorced, it's my fault. If somebody comes in and says that, I have a friend who's kind of going through that right now, and he's like, I'm still going to come to church because he's like, I realize I'm wrong and I'm repenting and I'm sorry and I hope I can fix this. But if I can't, I still want to make sure that like I get, I'm going to come in and be with God. And he's like, I realize I made a big mistake. It may have ruined my family, but it doesn't mean it has to ruin my future as far as heaven goes. And so he's just kind of, it's one of those things where we just got to we have to deal with those things as they come. And I think just being able to share that with other guys and help them, just like, hey, like it's not the end of the world. And for me, we're talking about mental health, man. I want to encourage, if anybody out there is struggling with this stuff or going through it, just like know that it like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that it gets like it will get better, and there's a future. I mean, the stats show that we know that suicide rates are higher in men than women naturally. It's like a 3-to-1 or somewhere around that range, I think. But one of the stats I saw, which has been 3, 4, 5 years ago, showed that in divorce, your suicide rates go up about 8 times in like the first 30 days of separation divorce. Mm-hmm. And the ratio of divorced men versus divorced women committing suicide is 9-to-1. Wow. And in that, I mean, just tells you, I mean, as a guy, like, and we're talking about the custody a while ago, it's like everything, you've been working hard all your life, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm never going to see my kids. Mm-hmm. Like I worked really hard, and now, my house is gone, half my stuff is gone, half my money's gone, and you're just like, why am I doing it? And it's easy to get frustrated, to be upset, and just to give up. And so my biggest thing is like, just, and that's one reason I think, just having a resource like the book, or just like, some courses that we're working on, is to give a guide just like, hey, hang on, like, don't give up. Like there's like, you're not alone. And I think that's the big thing I would tell people, is just like, you got to keep going, and like I tell them, is like, life is tough. You just got to be a little bit tougher than life today. That's it. Just a little bit tougher than what life's throwing at you, and you'll make it.
That's a great analogy with Peter, and going back to fishing. And I remember hearing a few years ago, you can't have a testimony without a test. And so I agree. I think it makes you a stronger Christian when you've endured something. And I want to be clear on this episode. I've said it in previous ones, but I bear the brunt of the divorce. I didn't want it, but I own it. I own that I didn't step up, and I wasn't the husband that I could have been. But one thing, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, one thing that I've noticed on the other side of this as a divorced dad with two kids, I don't see a lot of resources maybe in the church setting for co-parenting. And like, we did a Better Man series in my men's group, which was phenomenal, like how to be a better man, love and protect God's woman, which is awesome, and how to be a better husband and how to be a better dad. But they never got into how are you a better man for your kids when another man is living with your kids and you are divorced and you don't have a healthy co-parenting relationship. And I know for me, I have really been humbled over the last 2 years because I've watched another man be involved with my son's life in an environment where that should have been me. And you mentioned earlier, like, men and the suicide, and you've worked all your life for this house and to build this family, and then all of a sudden another dude is in your house that was in a divorce that you lost, watching your TV, doing the routine with your son, like the bedtime, the dinner time, like stuff that you're not getting to do because of that divorce. And I think for me personally, that's where the suicide component to me makes sense, and why guys would think that, because you've been completely replaced. Regardless of what your custody says in a decree, you've been replaced. I mean, that child is still your child, but someone else has come in and taken that role as the head of the household, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So I think I'd like to see maybe a Christian component. Maybe you have some resources, but like how you co-parent and how you kind of navigate that stuff. Because I know for me personally, man, I really was on an island with a lot of the stuff. I just tried to, I would try to just, the old saying, kill him with kindness. I went and met the guy that replaced me. I requested a meeting, and I just, whatever venom's thrown at me, man, I just I try to be cool and not react and control my emotions. And it's tough, dude. It's like a dog in a cage, and you're just poking it, and you gotta suck it up. Because I know at the end of the day, it's best for my son to show, hey, I can be a bigger man in this situation, and not let him see how it bothers me. And it is easier now, because it has been an ongoing thing. So it is easier now than it was, say, Brooks, when you and I first met. But now it is easier. But I think there's probably more guys out there, especially that identify as a true believer and as a Christian man, that probably need some guidance. Like, hey, how do I navigate this kind of stuff? Because you got to forgive, you got to love, you got to be kind, you got to be gentle. But there's that whole enemy component that slides in there too. Like, okay, I'm at war, but how do I handle, and I don't want people to get confused when I say enemy. I don't mean your ex. I'm talking from a spiritual warfare component. And we get into that a lot on this podcast. But you're going to war, but you have to show up, not like maybe us alpha dudes would show up ready to rip someone's face off. It's like, hey, okay, that's cool. And it's a weird world to navigate. And I'm going to say this one more time, and I'm going to give it back to you. I own my past. I'm sitting here tonight because of my own actions. And I want to make that clear on this episode. I don't know who all's going to watch this. I'm not a victim. I'm not blame shifting. It is on me, so I own it. But I do want to provide a resource for guys that are trying to live a better life, whether or not they're religious or not, but trying to be a good man for their children and do the right thing. And also, I like you used this word earlier, be a leader. And I'm embracing that role now. And that's why I talked this guy into doing a podcast, because I wanted to provide some kind of a platform for the 1% of us out there that are trying to really step up and be a real man and do the right thing. So.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things that what you're talking about there. And for me, like, yeah, like I never want to ever point blame, because in a relationship, there's two people always.
Yeah.
And I don't care how good or how bad it is. Like, nobody's ever 100% perfect and 100%, wrong, if you will. And so we've all, in any relationship we've ever been in, we've all messed up somewhere along the line. And so nothing was ever perfect. But I want to know, like you said, like, not being a victim. And I think that's really key, that, like, we don't take that victim side, that we own our side of the street. And when it comes down to it, like, I can clean my side of the street, I can take care of that, but that's all I can do. And when it comes to, like we talked about, the church leaders a lot of times, or the people that want to try to help out, you cannot fix a relationship that you're not in. And that's a lot of times people try to and I think it's, like in church, I think it's a lot of times where, especially men, kind of feel like they get pushed out because people are trying to fix it. And it's like, as a man, like I like fixing things already. I don't, I may not need, but you can't fix this because you're not in this. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that, it's almost like, you don't think I'm trying to fix it already. But like you said, and I think when it comes to the kid part, one thing that I've like I said, I've read and studied and just talked to a lot of people about, and it's all about just, you do your best with where you're at. And if you're someone who has your kids every other weekend, and like, then pour into your kids that weekend, let them see you. And I think part of that letting you see you is I don't think you want to like be miserable, be woe is me and all that kind of thing. But it's okay for them to see, like, that there's times whenever you're sad, or times that, if you get a little emotional and start tearing up a little bit, like, that's okay for your kids to see, like, man, like, I want to be with you. I love you. I'm sorry, whatever it is. And to make sure that you're, going to apologize, that you're going to let them know, like, you're not just this stone front that's just, tough and rough and I can handle everything. And let them know that you can handle it. But at the same time, like, there's times whenever you're like, man, I'm feeling some stuff, and I'm gonna, you may not share everything you're feeling with them, but at least they know, like, all right, like, like, your dad can be sad, dad can be a little upset, dad can be, feel these different feelings, and it lets the kids, I think, feel those things as well. But like I said, the biggest thing is just making sure that, that you're a stable, solid, safe to be with, and I think the kids see that, and and like you said, over the years, man, I don't think that you're ever replaced. I spoke to a friend whose mother passed away, and like, mom never was replaced. Like, dad may have remarried, but mom never was replaced. And I think the same thing, if you, and if we're in a situation where, the kid's living in another state and you only get, 6 weeks in the summer and a couple of holidays with them, like, you're not replaced. It's just, you may not be there every day, like you said, tucking the kids in. But you're, I think if you're being the dad you need to be, you're never going to be replaced.
Well, that's a good way to put it. And kind of, you mentioned this point earlier. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and I am definitely a better father now. on the other side of this thing. And I'm actually grateful for that, because if say the marriage would have continued, I wouldn't be the dad I am today, because it forced me to really get into the self-healing, the growth, and evolving into, the man I truly feel God has kind of designed me to be. And I actually this hit me when the night I found out I was getting divorced. That was the first time in my life I actually told God, like, I can't do this. I need your help. And I was 42 or 43 years old. I've never, ever in my entire life asked God to help me do anything. I mean, I talked to him and I prayed, but I never said, hey, Father, I need help with this. And I got on my hands and knees and was like, I don't know what to do. I can't control this. I need you. And when I did that, it kind of just jump started the whole keeping me sane process, because I had suicidal thoughts, man. That night I did, and it would kind of sit in the back of my head a little bit, but I would veer into reading scripture every day, praying, reaching out to people and saying, hey, I need help. I don't know what to do. But that was kind of the turning point for me. And if I hadn't experienced that, I can't honestly say that I would have ever really truly given my life to Christ. So I am grateful for it.
Yeah, I think
one of the things. Oh, go ahead, Doc.
I was just going to say, I think, like you said, it's one of those things where I think if you start diving in, you start diving into, whenever you're having a hard time. That's a lot of times, like, we'll pray harder whenever we're having a hard time, but if things are going good, we may not. And so I want to encourage guys. I was like, when you're in the middle of it, like, it's easier to, man, grab my Bible, start studying, reading, praying, but then all of a sudden, like, oh man, things are good now, and I quit. And I think that's whenever, it's like, oh, things are good, and then we don't realize it, and then we're back to where we were, and we're back.
Yeah.
To so I think, like you said, it's just trying, like, it's kind of like, man, the prayer, the studying, like, that got me back to where, like, it got me better. And if I keep doing that, it's only going to get me better. It's just whenever you quit, it's kind of, if I work out, I can work out really hard for 2 years, but then I don't work out for the next 5. Like, that 5-year span is going to reap more havoc than that 2 years did benefits. If you
It's a good point.
So one of the things I want to kind of unpack a little bit, we're talking about how the church views divorce, and kind of you feeling alienated. I'm sure you did too, Brooks. I think there's an important distinction, because I think our culture, like, glamorizes divorce. And now people are going out and having divorce parties.
Yeah.
It's like a bachelorette party, but it's a divorce party, or a bachelor party, but it's a divorce party. I think certainly there's relationships that dangerously have to end, like, or else it's going to be really bad. I think a lot of times what I've seen, especially in the church, it's like, it's either being blindsided. I had no idea this was coming. Or, we've had some issues, but, like, out of nowhere, like, I feel, you know what I mean? Is that something, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think for someone who's probably been in church on a regular basis, from my experience, those type of divorces are usually more blindsided. Yeah, and maybe outside of the church. But I don't know, like, about you guys, but, my old self was kind of clueless. Like, I always knew things were toxic, and it was keeping score type relationship, but I was cocky. I was like, she ain't ever gonna leave me. Like, that's kind of what I was always like. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess she is. It's
difficult.
But I wasn't blindsided. It was just more, I was too arrogant to see it. It was in front of me. I just didn't want to acknowledge it.
That's an interesting distinction too. I just worry, I've been to churches where even the pastor had been divorced.
Oh, wow.
And I don't necessarily even have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is in a culture where we glorify divorces. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think a few times I've been able to speak, whether it be church leaders or at a church or in a men's event, to where I kind of just let people know, like, you can't, we talked about country music, like listen to 3 country songs and try to get through it without it mentioning divorce, like, or
Yeah, for sure.
somebody leaving you. It's like, so whenever you're in the thralls of it, and especially that wound is fresh, like you turn the radio on and there's a song about somebody, lying, cheating, stealing, leaving. You turn any kind of TV or movie on,
Yeah.
there's something divorce, lying, cheating, stealing going on. And then, so you can't watch TV, you can't watch a movie, you can't, I mean, like, all you get, like, it's like, I'm going to read my Bible and read a self-help book and listen to a self-help podcast. And that's like the only way you might get around, like, ripping that wound and just pouring salt in it, because every song, every movie, and every TV show has something about it in there. And a lot of times it's glamorized. It's like, it's like, well, I wasn't happy with this guy, so I went with this guy. And life is, sunshine and roses now. It went from being terrible to great, when that's not the case at all. Even people that are like, man, my marriage was terrible. It's like life is still not great over here, because it's never perfect. And I think it's
Sure.
like you said, in today's society, it's glamorized. It's like, I just start fresh. It's like, it's like, we'll just rip this one up and throw it away. We'll just start over and with somebody new. It's kind of a whoever's, like, who's the next one coming down the street. And I think that there's a lot of that. I mean, we've seen people, probably know people who, they got older and they're like, man, I want to trade in for the new model. And that's kind of the way they look at it sometimes. Like, I want the new model. Can I get the newer model? And I want somebody 10 years younger that, like, and then 10 years later, they're unhappy again and they want somebody 10 years younger. So
Sure.
it's kind of that circuit. But I think there's a big thing about being, like you said, just that it's glamorized. And I mean, I don't know how to fix that. But other than just to let people know, like, there's nothing glamorous about it. That's for sure.
Well, I think you saying that is perfect, because I think sometimes when people are in a rough patch, and this is both sides of the table. This is wives and husbands. It can be either one or both sometimes. But I think they look at, we're in a rough patch right now. There's an exit plan here. And I think it's just important. I think you've got experience. You've got the experience of just even saying, we took an oath if, and this is like, worst case scenario, like it blew up. It's not a glamorous thing. This isn't something that's enjoyable. If that happens, now we have a resource. And I think that's part of the conversation that has to happen even within the church of, well, you said it earlier. It's like, what did I do? Yeah. Right? What did you do wrong? Let's try to fix this and put this back together for these guys. It's like, look, things went nuclear. There's got to be, what's the nuclear fallout plan? But that said, Brooks, I know you said you do a lot of talks with churches, with men's groups. I mean, do you see a recurring theme and conversation around how men are dealing with this or not dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about, like, the suicide rate is 9 to 1 men to women. So for me, it's really, a lot of it is, like, for guys, just don't check out, to stay the course. And for me, it's like, first off, like, let's not go down the self-harm route. We can stop that. Secondly, a lot of times, like we've talked about, like, even if you're in a congregation, a church that's not shunning you and still like, hey, like, we want you to be here and you're welcome. Even in those situations, a lot of the leadership and the people don't know exactly, like, okay, well, are you supposed to go to the singles class or the married class or the whole people class? Like, and they, like, which class are you supposed to go to? So it's kind of, and you're like, I don't know either. Like, I don't want to be the singles, but I'm not married. So you're kind of like, and so those kind of things are definitely can have some trouble. But, and then a lot of guys, when it comes to church, like, they will just walk away because it's like, I'm mad at God, I'm mad at the world, and none of these people are helping me. So I'm just going to go live the way the world wants me to, and just I'm going to party and live like I'm a college kid and don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's one of those things where I think this, like, as men, it's kind of like like you're trying to still be a good dad and a good man. Like, that's, for me, that's not a lifestyle that I would want for my kids to ever see.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I never want to have to lie to my kids about anything. So I'm like, no, I'm not out partying, and so that's one of those things. But I think also a lot of times too, I guess you might say that we'll give men a pass on some of that things. Like, oh, well, they just went through a lot of hard stuff, so we'll just let them. We won't say anything right now. But a good friend is going to be like, hey, dude, like, you're going down, and I think that's part of it. It's just, if you know somebody who's kind of going down that, just be that friend to them. You don't have to understand what they're going through. You just have to be there. And one of the best things that was told to me in all of this was my dad. And I was having a rough day, and he just said, I don't know what you're going through. He said, and I don't want to know what you're going through, but I'm here for you. And like, knowing that, like, all right, like he doesn't understand, and he knows he doesn't understand all the feelings I have, but he's here. Like, he's going to be there with me. Like, I can lean on him when I need to. He's going to, be there for me to just let me just vent out whatever I need to vent out. And having somebody like that, one or two, maybe three guys that you can just go pour it out to, is really important. And I think for that, but like you said, like, it's just, a recurring theme is really just like, a lot of churches don't know how to deal and to keep the men involved. And a lot of men just don't feel like Steve said, you don't feel worthy of anything. They don't feel worthy of even, like, I'm not good enough to even be here at the church, or, and then, the old ladies are like, oh, thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. It's like, or they're like, I'm so glad you're bringing your kids. I'm like, what else am I going to do? Like, take them to the honky tonk and stay out till 3 a.m. Like, what am I going to do? Like, and we're going to go eat Waffle House. I don't know. And it's one of those things where it's like, they mean well. And I think, for guys that are going through it, I think sometimes it's hard for us to be like, I know they mean well, step back from the situation.
Yeah.
Like, I know they mean well, just like, she's trying to do her best. It's like the lady that brings you the casserole that tastes terrible, but you're like, thank you. And then you don't eat it, but you just bring the dish back and like, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where we have to understand that a lot of people don't know what we're going through, and they don't know it. And they don't, they've never been there. So they don't know what to say. They're trying to help, but they don't. We just kind of try to give them a little grace for the fact that they don't know what they're doing. But at the same time, like, you may have to tell people, especially those closest to you, like, hey, I don't want to talk about this right now. Like, I just want to go fishing, and I don't want to talk, or like, I need 2 days just to kind of be away from everything. I'm just going to go camping for 2 days. Like, I'm just getting away. So, like, I'll send you a text message every now and then. I'm okay. Just, I need a couple, and just sometimes you have to lay those boundaries down and just tell people, like, this is what I need. This is what I don't need. And because a lot of times people are trying to help, but they don't know how. And sometimes their helping hurts more than it helps.
Yeah, it can be intimidating, to, after you've been through a divorce, and say the weekend you don't have your kids, and then you're going to a church by yourself. And we've talked about this on one of our other episodes, and people kind of look at you like, oh, I wonder what that guy did. Like, why is he by himself, or where's his family? And it's almost like you're kind of, to your point, Brooks, you're doing the right thing, but people almost don't know how to accept that. They almost expect you to go the opposite way. And I know for me, when I was really getting into my divorce, the flesh in me was like, man, F this. I'm just going to go to Tin Roof and I'm getting revenge. But I was really trying hard to walk on the right path and do the right thing. And I was only a year sober at that point. So I knew for me, I couldn't maintain sobriety if I really gave into the flesh. But I know for me personally, it kind of brought a group of people into my life that I never saw coming, because I wouldn't have been able to be surrounded by individuals like that if I would have leaned back on my old unhealthy habits. And I really didn't want to, and my kids really were at the forefront for me. I knew like, well, I can't go back to the way I used to be, because now I've really got to set an example for my kids and show them like, hey, no matter what, I can hold this little unit together, even though I may be dying on the inside on some days, but I can put them first and try to just show up and be there, stay the course, and not just say, man, this is just too much. I can't do it on my own. Because I know for a man and for me, like, you know, you get your kid on your own, and it's the first time and they're young. It's intimidating, man. I mean, there's a lot. We don't give women enough credit sometimes of all the stuff they do. And it's like, God bless, man. Like, there's a lot to keep up with. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it is enjoyable because it builds a bond. And like my son and I have a really, really tight bond now. And, you know, we just continue to grow and develop that. And it's really important to me. And I'm trying to show him, you know, hey, I'm putting God first in my life, and I'm going to do the right thing and try to be a good dad and good leader. And I'm not going to veer off course just because I'm, you know, maybe not the product of a squeaky clean past, you know, and obviously he doesn't know the ins and outs of my past, but it's, I think we tend to then put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and I'm guilty of that, but we have to give ourselves grace and be proud of where we are. So I've tried to do that even through your book, like look at things sometimes like, man, you have been through a lot. Like you should be proud of yourself. Like you've overcome a lot of adversity, and it's been easy to say, F this, I'm done. And I'm just going to go back to having fun and not like, yeah, the easy way. And this is a harder way, but it's worth it. It's definitely, you know, it's definitely worth it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the easy way is always easy in the beginning. Always think about an easy day leads to a hard life, and a hard day leads to an easy life. And I think that's one thing we can always think about is like, man, you know, like it's hard. It may be easier, like you said, to go out and do something, and it may be harder. Just like I'm working, I'm going home, I'm going to bed, and you know, and you know that's one thing too. Always like, especially somebody's just fresh in it. I'm like, dude, like if there's any vices, anything like that, like just stay away from it. Had a guy that I kind of coached a little bit, and he just told me, he's like, man, he's like, when it first happened, he's like, I was used to having just like, I'd have a little drink every now and then, and he's like, I would just took my bottle of Jack out there and I poured me one drink. He's like, I'm gonna have one drink, and he said, I was just gonna walk around the backyard, just kind of process what was going on. I have one drink. He said that night I had one bottle. And it was, and he said, I didn't realize it. He's like, I just got to thinking and ruminating and everything else. And it was just like drink. And he just kept pouring drinks. And he's like, and then I realized like my bottle was empty. And he's like, I had a full bottle. And he's like, I only have one. He's like, at most I might have two drinks, but that's it. And, you know, and like you said, like if you're on a sobriety path, especially, it's so easy just, you know, dive down, and then, you know, the next thing you know is you're waking up in a gutter on 2nd Avenue, and 3 days later you don't know what happened. So you know, nobody wants that.
Yeah, one thing that I like that we've accomplished, or at least we're trying to accomplish through this podcast, especially, is creating an environment where men's feelings are acknowledged. They're also explored. One of the things that I've known and know about, I mean, Steve and countless friends that when they come through hard times, guys are really quick, mostly, to take responsibility. I know a couple deadbeats that don't take any responsibility, but that's who they are, right? But for the most part, especially Christian men, when they're going through hardship, they take responsibility. What I also see with that, though, is they take all the responsibility, and they take it to an extreme. Do you see that? And if you do, I mean, do you have an opinion on, is that healthy? Is that unhealthy? What can we do about that?
I mean, taking all the responsibilities, I mean, it's not healthy because it's like, I can do it. and I've been guilty of especially even with my kids. And I'm like, hey, I've got big shoulders. I can carry everything. And to a certain extent, I can. But there's been a few times when I've tried to do everything, carry everything. You're trying to do it all, and you're not recovering and you're not resting. And just same thing as working out. But it's like, man, I'm working. I'm spending time every minute I can with my kids. I'm working extra. I'm working out. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And then all of a sudden, you're laid up on the couch for 3 days, and you're like, that. I don't know. Like, I just don't feel good. And like, I can't get up off the couch. Like, I'm dizzy. I don't feel good. I'm sick. And it's because your body's going to make you shut down. And if you don't stop and rest and recover. But I think it's easy for us to take all that burden on us. And I mean, we don't need to. At all. And I think part of it too is having that band of brothers around us that we can kind of share some of the burden with, but also knowing that God told us that we don't have to carry it all, and he would never give us a burden more than what we could bear. But sometimes we take on more than we're supposed to. And God doesn't give us more than we can bear, but I'll take on more than I can bear myself. And then I'll try to take care of it myself instead of turning it over. And I think that's a big thing too. Is just like, you got to take time for you. You got to have that moment, like, especially if your kids are gone, maybe that weekend you're like, I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to just relax. I'm going to have some just, rest and recovery time. And if that's what you need. And because I mean, this whole process is stressful, and it's like, it's never over. It's always in the back of your mind. And it's stressful. So you've got to have some way to unload those burdens. And whether it be, finding some hobbies, working out is a great one. You get some of that stress out and build up some resilience to your body. But also you're going to need time. I just need to soak in a hot bath. I need to just take a nap. I need to go for a walk outside, whatever it may be, and just spend some time doing what rejuvenates you and recover. Maybe some people like to paint, whatever it is. Just doing something that's going to help you rest and recover and get back to your normal and your baseline without overburdening yourself.
I love it, man. Doc, look, it's a lot to process. I love what you've done though. And I'm not in that boat, thank God. And I don't want to be, but I always appreciate when there's guys out there that are doing things to support my friends. We all know somebody that's going through it or has gone through it. So it's really cool for me to see, especially from a Christian perspective. I think we see enough of the world culture influencing how we treat disasters in our life. And so I appreciate seeing it. I think if there's one thing that we can give, or I'd like to hear from both of you, one thing that we can give our listeners and anybody out there, even just a little sound bite. We'll start with you, Steve. Like, what's one thing that keeps somebody's head screwed on straight if they're facing down a divorce?
I think the biggest thing, if you're facing out a divorce and you have kids, you have to put the kids first. So that may mean that you're not going to have help when it comes to getting the kids ready for school or cooking their meals, whatever it may be, but own that role as and I'm going to speak for the men here, own that role as their dad and make sure that you make those kids a priority, because I have seen the other side of that, where the other individual had somebody come right in and basically replace a role. And it was not healthy for that child because they didn't understand, why was my dad here a month ago and now he's gone, but there's this other man in my house. And so I think as a man, especially as a Christian man, it's hard to be humble. It's hard to control your anger, to control reacting in situations, but kids are always watching. They pick up on everything. And from personal experience, they will test you. they will say things that will cut your soul because they've heard it from the other side and they're watching to see, how are you going to react? What are you going to say? Because that child is always, like Brooks said, that child's always going to be a part of you, regardless of where you are. And you have to constantly kind of be aware of that, how to navigate it. And it varies on their ages, but just do the right thing, be present, and make sure that child feels important.
Yeah, I mean, Steve's exactly right. And the first thought that came to my mind, I mean, I always think about that forward on the book there, and the cover is really like, in Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And when you're first getting into the divorce, I mean, you feel like you're in, I can't see my hand in front of my face. It's so dark, and I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm going. I'm lost. But if you keep moving forward, and just some days it's just like, I'm not gonna, like, if I'm at a -4 today, and if I end up at a -3, that's forward progress. If I'm at a -4, at least I didn't break something and go backwards. That's kind of like, some days it's like, man, I didn't break anything today. I didn't mess anything up. Okay, that's a win for today. And I think it's like those small victories like that, is seeing those, but knowing that even though you're in this dark valley right now, you just need to see one step in front of you, take one step today, and then tomorrow take one more step. And soon enough, you're going to be on that mountain peak that you can barely see off in the distance. And when you turn around, like, that dark valley you were in it's going to be just a speck on the horizon, if you can even see it. And that's one of those, it's hard to see that in the moment, but in the end, you're going to get there. And when you do, you're going to be, man, like, it was hard, but it was worth it. And I think that's the biggest thing I can tell guys, is just, you don't give up, and you just keep moving forward every single day, from that dark valley to that mountain peak that's standing out there in front of you.
I love that. So for the listeners out here, how can they find you? What resources do you have available? Kind of shout yourself out for a minute.
Yeah. So most of the social media stuff, it's Dr. Brooks Tiller, Dr. Brooks Tiller. DrBrooksTiller.com is a website. It's got some stuff on there. We're launching a Divorce Disciples podcast and some resources on our website, Divorce Disciples. Will be on there too. But for me, I mean, like I said, I'm a physical therapist, a strength coach. So on there, we're going to have a few resources just to, like, healthy recipes, like shopping lists and things that a single guy, like, I've never shopped by myself before, that he can go in there and just kind of get some resources. I'm also, I'm actually a financial advisor now as well. So just kind of trying to touch a lot of the gamut. So, like, I can, just being able to, if guys have questions, I can help them with, whether it be finances or, spiritual, mental, physical, and try to help guys that are going through all this to see where they need to be, and just to help them make it through, especially that, the first little bit that's so hard, to be there to walk with them through that, whether it be through the book. We plan on having some courses and some classes coming out in the next year, just working on all that and getting through some of that, putting it all together. So we'll have some of that we'll be able to, whether it be a church leader, a friend, or someone that just, it's like, man, I need something. They can find it, they can get it, and just help them walk through it. Like I said, we may not want to go see a counselor, we may not want to talk to anybody about it right now. We can kind of jump into a class, of course, to help us make it through, like, what do I need to do, and just kind of make me survive so I can make it through the next day.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
This is definitely a big issue now for men in our society. I think it's great, Brooks, that you're kind of carrying that torch. And a Divorce Disciples is a really cool title. And I think you guys are going to help a lot of men, because, kind of like I said before, a lot of us just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you can even get into the legal side of it, going through that whole process, and you need counsel and advice. And there's things that, me personally, I didn't think about as much, even with legal counsel, that now are starting to come to fruition, that I probably should have looked at a little bit closer. So I think, at least on the guys' end, you almost have to have all your ducks in a row and just lean into it, man, and say, okay, this thing is going to happen. I need to be as prepared as I can and make sure that I'm taken care of and my kids are taken care of, and I can be that present father and provide the best that I can possible.
Yeah, it's kind of like getting your ducks in a row in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. 100%, bro.
Well, look, man, it's awesome to meet you. I'm really impressed, and I can't wait to see what's next in your journey.
I appreciate it. No, it's great, and I appreciate your opportunity. Like I said, just hopefully this has encouraged some folks, and it'll just help them to know. I mean, that tomorrow will be a better day, and it may not seem like it. And that grieving process is up and down. It's not linear.
Mm-hmm.
But the process is just getting better one day at a time, and just keep going and just never give up.
I love that. That's a good note to stop on, my friend.
Honor to have you, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, man.